Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to SKG Pro Series Round 5 here for the Mexico Grand Prix, and we are just moments away from our race today. I am Owen Baldero and I will be taking you through all of today's action here at the Mexico City circuit as we get ready to go racing here in Mexico. But first of all, let's take a quick look at the track we will be racing at today, shall we? As here we are. There are 17 corners here at the Mexico City circuit. 3 DRS zones. 3 points for our drivers to deploy that DRS to get an extra 8.5 miles an hour of pace. And plenty of challenging corners. That middle sector is especially challenging for our drivers. You know, there is time to be gained and lost all over this track. So why don't we jump straight in to qualifying? We are just moments away. As now, here we go. Let's go down to the pit lane where we see 19 drivers here on the grid for today's race. We have a very competitive grid as well. You know, we've seen it all season. So many drivers in contention for pole position. Round 1 pole was taken by Tsubi, and then the Ferraris came back in the previous couple of races. It's going to be a very interesting one. As actually, let's take a quick look at the standings, shall we? There you go. There are your standings. It is a very close field we see here in SKG Pro Series. I'm just trying to load it up myself. It's taking me a few seconds to get a visual on it, but it is a very close one. Florian Vanzwelter is leading at the moment. It is a very competitive season so far, with only 12 points separating our top 2 at the moment. So it's Florian Vanzwelter leading on 51 points from Victor Widler, Lucas Beisner, Paul Villegas, Scott Holmes, Ivan Heskrig, Cameron Dowds, Lorenz Patton, Aaron Ramirez, and then Alex Santana. And then we see Thomas Eng, Sim Racing, Ventari Esports, Tatum Reztech, AMR, BRC, RSC, OMB, FST, ETA, and FST. That is the constructors. But here we go. We now move into qualifying. Here we go. We have drivers starting to come out on to the racetrackers. Apologies for the slightly rocky start there. There was as hello Kyle, yeah, there was some expected tech issues, which with me there always ends up being, let's be completely honest, but we have got it fixed. As now, let's get everything we need up. Track map, there we are, and then we'll get rid of that bar. As now, first out on to the track is going to be... Who is it going to be? It's going to be the McLaren of Simon Equestre. Oh, no, it's not. That is going to be his teammate of Tom Roberts, who is now coming through the final sector. You know, this is a very common part of the racetrack where you see drivers invalidate their lap times, so it's probably not going to be an issue here in SKG, of course, because this is the Pro Series, so everyone here is very well accustomed to sticking within the white lines, but it's something you see in the lower levels of league racing. Now here we go, Tom Roberts takes us on to our first lap of the session. Everyone on soft tyres, of course, as towards turn 1 we go. Down to third gear, flick it in, and then you need to get your car positioned nicely for turn 2 and turn 3. Be careful not to take too much curb. You know, there is a very nice sweet spot with the curbing here at Mexico. You need to be really careful because there is time to be gained, but there is so much more to be lost if you mess it up through turn 4. Nice and cleanly, lovely stuff from the BRC, a driver so far. Keeping it nice and clean through the middle sector, fighting the car a little bit, as he's now going to have to fight his way for a little bit of traffic using the grass. The RB on the right hand side getting out the way very nicely, and then just going to be using his last little bit of ERS down the final DRS straight of the lap. Tom Roberts on a 54.955 at the moment. This is of course being the first lap that is going to be put in, I believe, As now, final couple of corners to the final corner, down to third gear. Nip it in, use the curb, and then keep it as tight as you can to shorten your run to the line. It's going to be a 13.837 for your first time here at Mexico, as we now wait for others to start putting in some times. As we go, it's going to be the Alpine of, I believe, Claudio Diaz next up to the line. It's a 14.1. Zach Miles puts in a 14.2 as well, as Alejandro Loureiro puts in a 13.7. Oliver Knott with a 13.9. Grid looking very close at the moment. Now, next is going to be the Red Bull of Pau Villegas. It's a 14.211 there. Fifth fastest at the moment. Next is going to be the McLaren of Simon Equestre. 14.9. Just over a second off pole position. Dennis Langrock puts in a 13.824. A 10th off of the fastest so far from the Red Bull driver of Alejandro Loureiro. As we now move to Noel, who heads into the pit lane. It's going to be a Sauber of APK up to 8th place on a 14.213. There's no Enzo Sabaton making his way around the final corner. That looked very handy through there. And now shortening the run towards the line. It's a 13.870, 4th place at the moment. Just 0.03 of a second away from Tom Roberts in 3rd place, who is actually only about 13 thousandths off the Aston Martin of Dennis Langrock, who currently sits in 2nd place. As we now go to Nico Rassenberg, very close to the real-life driver in terms of name of Nico Rosberg, of course, as now towards the middle sector split. It's a 55.266, about 0.3 off what we saw. I believe it was Lorenz Patton, I believe we saw put in the first lap of the session. As now we go towards the line with the Haas, it's going to be a 14.119, 10th at the moment. But there is still plenty of time left in this session to improve up the field, as now Daniel Hope, the only other driver on a lap at the moment, putting in his first time of the session. Good evening, Valerio. How are you doing? How are you doing? Looking pretty good here is the VNT Ferrari. It's a 55.228, very similar pace at the moment to the OMB Haas of Nico Rassenberg that we saw a couple of minutes ago. Now using all of the curbing available, keeping his car barely in check through this section. Is now up to the line he goes. It's going to be a 14.007. I thought it was going to be a 13.9, but he just about misses out on that benchmark by only 8 thousandths of a second there, as that is everyone's first runs done in this one. So why don't we take a quick peek at the calendar which we will be contesting for the rest of the season. So we've had Hungary, Qatar, Las Vegas, Texas, and Austria. We now are at Mexico, and then next week we head to Belgium, China, and then it's Britain, followed by Spain, Monza, Brazil, and then we go to Abu Dhabi for the season's finale. So it is a very, very competitive calendar that we see, tracks that really encourage overtaking, and it's going to be very interesting to see how things go as we move back to the game. We see the McLaren, the BRC driver of Tom Roberts, coming out of the pit lane for the second time this session. He is going to be looking to improve. He's under a 10.5 away from pole at the moment, so he is he's pretty close. You know, all it takes is a couple of good corners, you know, a chain of good corners, and he could very well be in the fight for pole position in this one. Because, of course, Mexico, very important. How you use your battery around here can be the key factor in deciding whether you start first or whether you start fifth, for instance. And, you know, it's also one of those tracks where people argue that it's actually better to not start on pole because of how long the run to turn one is. Some people say that you actually probably want to start about third. It's similar to Sochi, I believe, was the other one where it was like that. Starting third is supposedly the optimal place to be in, because you pick up a 2-car tow, and then usually here the pole position driver, which in this case is at the moment Alejandro Loureiro, does not often stay in P1. So we now watch the McLaren. Is he going to push for that pole position, or is he going to try and be clever? Is someone going to be really clever here, like Valtteri Bottas was, I believe it was 2021 Sochi, where he purposely gave Max Verstappen a tow to allow himself to start in 3rd place, which was considered the optimal starting spot. As now towards turn 4 we go. Nice stuff through that. Purple to the 1st sector, so no holding back for Tom Roberts at the moment. Really using everything available, just slightly tweaking his line on exit. Lovely stuff through there. Just a slight downshift. Gets his car into position nicely. As we head to the middle sector split, what is the improvement looking like? It's 1/100th of a second up at the moment for the McLaren. It's not going to be enough. Or actually, no, they would put him on the exact same time at the moment with a 13,000th improvement as the Aston Martin of Dennis Langrock. So let's see what he can do in this final sector. As up to the line he comes now. Puts it on pole. It's a 1 minute 13.706. 2,000ths ahead of this man here, Alejandro Loureiro, who is starting his 2nd lap of the session now, as we see him fly through the first 3 corners nicely, using everything available to him through there. Lovely stuff as we head to the 1st sector duck. He is 300ths of a second up, which would be enough to steal pole position back from the BRC of Tom Roberts here. Driving for AMR today, Alejandro Loureiro will be looking for a good result. As now through here, lovely stuff. Looking really good for Alejandro Loureiro at the moment. And now, how much is he improving? He is 1.3 tenths up. This could be a time into the 1 minute 13.5s, as there are cars pretty much stationary. They're off the racing line, so it's not going to affect Loureiro at the moment, but it might have put him off ever so slightly. As up towards the line goes the Red Bull. Is it pole? Yes, it is. It's a 1:13.616. He lost 400ths of a second in the final sector, potentially due to those cars lagging behind at the final couple of corners. As we see Dennis Langrock now a 10.5 up in the first 2 sectors, as now keeping it clean in the final corner, having a little bit of a snap on exit up to the line to 13.635, 200ths of a second or so off of Alejandro Loureiro. So still not quite able to topple the AMR at the moment. As we now go to Tomasetto Ellia, who looks to be running very well. 2 tenths up in the middle sector. Has he made it a bigger improvement? Yes, he has. He goes up to 5th place on a 1:13.709, just 3,000ths off of Tom Roberts. So this grid here, very, very close. The fine margins is going to be what decides pole here in Mexico City. As we will now head to Lorenz Patton, who once again, another driver in the final sector, just making sure he gets it through cleanly. And now to the line, he's on a 13.844, 7th place for the Alpine at the moment. Things changing pretty rapidly. At the moment we head to the ETA of Noel, who is not pushing here. What about Nico Rassenberg using a lot of ERS down the first straight, but positioning his car nicely, maybe taking a little bit too much curbing in turn 2, but corrected it in turn 3. As now we head towards the first sector split. Has that been a costly mistake? Yes, it has. He's 8,000ths of a second down compared to his previous best. And now there is an Alpine going slow, who gets out the way very cleanly. No major disasters there for the OMB of Nico Rassenberg, who now heads towards the end of the middle sector and will get a reading. He's found a 10.5, so that poor first sector has not impeded his progress too much here, and he's actually only 1,000th of a second off of Claudio Diaz in P12. Little bit of a slide through turn 15. Is now round turn 17. He goes final corner up to the line. Comes Nico Ratzenberg. It's 14.006. Just misses out on me, breaking into the 1 minute 13s, but goes up to 11th place past Noel and past Claudio Diaz, as once again everybody is back into the pit lane, preparing themselves for the final runs. And now, ladies and gentlemen, this is the point where I'm going to ask you, get your predictions into the chat. Who do you think is going to win this race? You know, I'm expecting to see huge DRS trains, but I want to know, what is your prediction? Who is going to take this pole position, first of all? And secondly, who do we think is going to be the winner of this race? And then give me your podium prediction. Give me somebody who could be a dark horse. Things like that. I want to hear all of the predictions you have as we just enter that quiet period of qualifying, which we wait for it to begin, as we have had a 20th driver join the session. I'm just trying to work out who it was. Might have been Noah Raza, potentially, as now our first driver has come out onto the track. We see here Simone Equestre once again making his way out onto the track. This is it then for everyone now coming out of the track. These are probably going to be their final runs. I think maybe Alejandro Equestre, or it's not Alejandro Equestre, sorry, Simone Equestre has timed it, so he can do another. Yes, he is going to be able to do another run. So if he does invalidate this one here, he will be able to do a second run. As you see there, Simone Equestre was doing the tyre warming strategy in F1 25, which I think is very entertaining. That you, to warm your tyres, you just slightly wobble the wheel like that through braking zones and through on the straights. I think that is quite entertaining. It's always been that the tyre warming methods in the F1 games have always been interesting, to say the least, as we now head on to potentially the BRC driver's final run of this session, as down the main straight, using probably 50% of the DRS, if not more, which he has, and then towards turn 1, keeping it clean, using all of the left-hand curb, and then flicking it in, and then staying off these curbs, a bit more cautious than other drivers we have seen in this session so far when it comes to those inside curves, because they can be lethal, and he is 8 thousandths of a second down in Sector 1, but he's still close enough to his time that there is still plenty to be found through this middle sector, which has 7 corners to contend with. As now just keeping it within track limits, cars doing their best to get out of the McLaren's way, which they are managing to do just about right now, but he enters into some heavy traffic. 0.4 of a second improvement for Simone Equestre at the moment, but he's going to need a little bit more than that to enter into the fight for position here, because he is currently 7/10 off of Simon Pfeiffer in 17th. Up to the line he goes. It's a 14.3. Does not improve position, does improve time, as Alejandro Loureiro puts in a 13.568, maybe picking up a toe from the McLaren there. Goes on to pole by even more of a margin. Dennis Langrock, we see, is 0.02 of a second up. Is not quite going to be enough, but if he keeps making little inroads like that, he can very well get close to Alejandro Loureiro's time and even challenge it and maybe go even faster. As through the middle sector, the car looking stable, but looking unstable as well, just flying through there. And now towards the middle sector split, we'll see, has the TES driver found any more? Half a second at the moment. Enzo Sabaton retires from the session, as does Simon Pfeiffer. They don't believe they can go any faster. And now, round the final corner comes Dennis Langrock, ERS still to use, using everything towards the line. Is it pole? Yes, it is. It's a 1:13.549, 19 thousandths of a second faster. But will it stay pole? Tom Roberts up to the line. Doesn't go faster. Invalidated that one, I believe. And now Oliver Knott up to third place at 1:13.666. Pau Villegas making his way through the middle sector, but isn't pushing. What about Lorenz Patton? Was 900ths of a second up as towards the line he goes. It's a 1:13.709 up to 8th place, past Pau Villegas. As is there anyone else pushing hard? We see Daniel Hope up to the line, 13.915. Did not go past anyone there. And I think that is going to conclude qualifying there, ladies and gentlemen. What a qualifying. In the end, decided by only 19 thousandths of a second. As I said, fine margins separating our drivers here today. 4 drivers in 0.005. Yeah, 5th down to 8th is a joke. 5 thousandths of a second separating 5th down to 9th is crazy. As a hello, whoever is on the SKG Twitch. Hello and welcome into the stream. We've just finished qualifying, as you see, and our order for the race is Dennis Langrock, Alejandro Loureiro, Claudio Diaz, Oliver Knott, Tachubi, Tom Roberts, Tomasetto Elia, Lorenz Patton, Pau Villegas, Zach Miles, Enzo Sabaton, Nico Rassenberg, APK, Daniel Hope, Noah Raza, Josh Rothwell, Noel, Simon Pfeiffer, Anton Shebotarov, and then Simone Esquestre rounds out our grid for today's race. We get ready to go racing in just a few moments. We will be right back with you for all of the action. Well then, we're back, ladies and gentlemen, and just moments away from the race. We were due to begin at 8:29 p.m, which is the time right now. So people will be readying up, strategies will be locked in, and we will be going soon. As hello Panos, as 7 adverts. Unfortunate, Clausen, unfortunate. I have a 2-minute advert on my phone, which is what I'm loosely keeping an eye on the chat on. So yeah, that's it's unfortunate for you. You're going to miss the race start, but there we are. As we just wait, so get your predictions into the chat. Turn 1 is going to be really interesting, of course, because the run down to the first corner is so long, as we will find out what is going to happen now, as it's 5 red lights. And we're racing here in Mexico. Dennis Langrock gets off to a good start from pole position, but with the toe, can he hold it? Oliver Knott in a little bit of trouble against Claudio Diaz, fighting for third place. Tom Roberts moving up to 4th place. to Tubi. There's an Alpine of Claudio Diaz off wide. There's been some contact, and that is a virtual safety car immediately. Oliver Knott gets himself up to 3rd place, past Tubi, who's going to give it up after the VSC. They all bundle back into position after the VSC. And, well, so Alejandro Loureiro and Dennis Langrock have both just pulled a huge gap out on safety car, as people are getting 10-second penalties all over the shop for ignoring yellow flags. What on earth is going on? That huge cluster of cars has just caused 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to pick up 10-second penalties. And Dennis Langrock is already 1.4 seconds clear. Of course, I imagine Loureiro has just been driving that little bit slower under VSC in order to try and get the jump on the Aston Martin once we go racing, as it's green, and it's a poor restart from the AMR driver, getting jumped by Tom Roberts down the inside of Oliver Knott, who's going to be forced onto the outside, which switches to the inside. Tubi's going to capitalise and try and go up the inside of Tom Roberts as well, and that has been an awful restart for Alejandro Loureiro, who's down to 5th place, and Dennis Langrock already leads by 2.1 seconds, so an absolute dream restart for him. Absolutely flying away at the moment, as now we see Tubi using the ERS plus the toe to pull alongside and get the overlap on Tom Roberts for the final place on the podium. Into turn 1, there's an Aston Martin. Oh my god, Pau Villegas, big crash. Pau Villegas out of the session. That is a big one, and that is going to be a virtual safety car. What on earth has just happened into turn 1? We've already had 4 retirements. Dennis Langrock out as well. Tubi out of the session as well. Tom Roberts out. Do we have a restart potentially? A lot of people picking up 10 seconds. Retire. Okay, we are retiring, ladies and gentlemen. So once again, we will be back in a few moments. Once we get back underway, we're going to get this restart fixed, restart sorted, and then we will be back with you in a few moments' time. Don't miss the action. We will be back. See you soon. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back and we are ready to get underway once again for the second time for round 5 of season 2 here at Mexico. So we have more news for you on that restart. So it was because of that weird virtual safety car restart that saw multiple people pick up 10-second penalties. There was some drivers complaining that the Delta was incredibly strict and just straight up weird. They were saying it wasn't correct. So that was the reason for it, as we now go to 5 red lights for the second time and the final time we're racing here in Mexico. It's a good start from Dennis Langrock from pole position. Once again, Enzo Sabaton getting into the top 10. There's some ghosting shenanigans, but in behind, Oliver Knott once again gets a really good launch and could be challenging for second place into turn 1. He's not going to go for second, but he is going to go for third. Round the outside, there's a little bit of contact with the Alpine of Claudio Diaz, who capitalizes brilliantly, gets up to third place, and that is the first couple of corners. Enzo Sabaton making his way up to 9th place. Lorenz Patton and Tomasetto Elia are side by side. Tom Roberts now looking to capitalise as well, starting in P6. Tachubi making his way up to P4 on the inside line, as there's a free wide through that corner there. Pau Villegas dropping down the order a little bit, and now things starting to calm down. Dennis Langrock already 1.2 seconds clear. So once again, him proving the general rule of thumb wrong, that you want to start P3. He started P1 and is already absolutely flying away from the rest of the field, as we now move to Tom Roberts, who is right behind the Ferrari of Oliver Knott. Very close to the back. We will take a quick look. We'll take a look at tyres. We'll leave it up as well. And there we are. So Dennis Langrock on medium tyres. That is why he is so much faster at the moment. And there are 2 cars of Alejandro Loureiro and Claudio Diaz on hards. Most people choosing the hard compound in their first stint. The only ones choosing the mediums are Langrock, Tachubi, Sabaton, Rassenberg, and then Anton Shabotarov, who is down in last place in this race at the moment of Simon Pfeiffer and Noah Raza fighting amongst themselves, with Noel looking to get involved as well. The ET8 teammate of Simon Pfeiffer going around the outside of him. They're trying to defend from Noah Raza, I think, but they're going side by side. The Mercedes of Pfeiffer gets hung out to dry a little bit. That allows Noel. There's a little bit of contact that forces Pfeiffer off the track a little bit. That might open an opportunity. Not quite. It looked like for a minute Noah Raza might try to capitalise on that, but he unfortunately was not quite able to do so. But on lap 2 of 36, it's Langrock, 2.2 clear, and then the rest of them, everybody else in DRS. We have a huge clump at the moment behind the TES driver. ET8 fighting like prime Rosberg Hamilton. Yep, they were giving it absolutely everything amongst themselves for position there, Noel and Simon Pfeiffer. I mean, it's not necessarily a bad thing to be competitive. When you're fighting your esports teammate, you might not necessarily want to fight that hard, as Shabotarov, retires in the pit lane there on lap 2. We don't like to see when people retire. We want to see everyone finishing races, so that is a bit unfortunate. As now, Claudio Diaz looking very close and very racy behind the back of Loureiro, who has had a slightly more tame restart than he had, than he had on the first lap. In the previous race, the one we of course had to abort and restart due to that VSC glitch that absolutely ruined some people's Delta. Blood, sweat and tears over P15 on lap 2. Yeah, I mean it wasn't far off blood, sweat and tears, I've got to say. But we do like a good bit of racing. But I mean their team principals at ET8 probably won't have liked it as much as we did, unfortunately for them. You know, you don't, especially as a team principal, it's your worst nightmare to see your drivers, fighting so hard over a position which means absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of the championship. So that will not be good for them. But now we're just in a DRS train at the moment. As I say, that Zach Miles moves himself past Noah Rauser. That is of course for P17, not for any points, but for a bit of pride, let's say. That the gap between Loureiro and Langrock is starting to stabilise now a little bit. If I had to guess, Langrock will probably be in on those mediums, and everyone else on the medium compound will probably be in around lap 14, 15, somewhere around that range. Maybe a couple of laps earlier, but I think 12 or 13 is probably the very earliest they will go in. I mean, I'm no expert on esports strategy, especially when it comes to esports, but that is what I would hypothesize. Although I could be completely wrong. You never know. As now we head down the DRS straight, is Claudio Diaz going to go for a move here as Noel picks up the first track limit penalty of the race. Here we go then, Claudio Diaz pulling out, not trying to overtake, just cooling his engine a little bit down the straight. I know, engine cooling, something very important here at Mexico, because track temperature is usually a little bit warmer than at other circuits. As back at P9, there is starting to be a little bit of a split, as you see Nico Rassenberg slightly losing touch with Enzo Sabaton, who is in turn losing touch with Lorenz Patton in P7, and then Tomasetto Elia on those hards also starting to lose touch with Rassenberg in P9. So a little bit of field split now here on lap 5 of 36. As we now go back to the two ET8 teammates who have calmed down a little bit. They're not fighting like cat and mouse as they were just a few laps ago. That was a very, very hard battle between the two of them. And we now move to our race leader, Dennis Langrock, with 2.5 seconds clear at the moment. The gap stabilising nicely. Probably he is just in tyre management mode, making sure that he can get those tyres as far as he can, as Nico Rassenberg heads into the pit lane on lap 5 of 36, getting off those hards or mediums. Clearly didn't like them, probably going to be going for a set of hards, which he is. Clearly did not like the middle step when it comes to tyre compounds, and decided he wanted to go for the hards in this one, which, if I had to guess, he will probably carry to about lap 25, 26, something like that, and then will probably go for mediums to the end, if he has selected a balanced strategy. That is, of course, I'm just speculating. He could well be on the harder tyre strategy, and could have selected to have 2 sets of hards. Isn't it very early to go on hard now? Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It is quite early to go onto the hard tyres, but equally, you know, clean air. He's going to have clean air now. He's got 20.5 seconds to Simona Questre ahead of him. He's going to have plenty of clean air. So if he can bang in, you know, 10, 15 consistent laps, whilst others fight in DRS and dirty air, then maybe he can do something here. Maybe. It's It's going to be interesting to see, but that is what I would speculate. You know, he's going for that clean air. He's going for a 2-stop, and he wants to bang in some really, really clean laps early in the race. Is what I would speculate, at least. As now Noel is pushing up the field. Josh Rothwell fighting him all the way for it though, and manages to maintain 13th place. The two Mercedes now need to work together a little bit better than they were earlier, as Pau Villegas down the inside moves himself past APK up to 10th place, overtaking the medium runner on those hard. So maybe the drop off is starting to begin, and I mean that gap has come down between Dennis Langrock and Loureiro by about 0.2 of a second. So maybe those medium compound are starting to fall away just a little bit in comparison to the hards. You know, tyre wear is obviously a far bigger issue in this game than it was in F1 24 or 23, for instance. 24 especially, you know, tyre wear in F1 23 was so low. I mean, hards at Las Vegas could pretty much do the entire race. It was ridiculous. He passed our dear French Mongolian baguette. Brilliant, Lucas. Who is that that you speak of? As now Enzo Sabaton down the inside of Lorenz Patton. A little bit of contact, which makes the Alpine Ghost, and now could open him up to Tomasetto Elia. And he's still ghosting, is he? Okay, he is not in the race. He is an AI. Because the way they're just driving through him, he is an AI. Okay, that makes a bit more sense now. As now once again Tom Roberts right on the back of Titubius. Josh Rothwell has rejoined the session, but is now 1.8 seconds behind his teammate Zach Miles, who is still fighting the two Mercedes of Pfeiffer and Noel, who are up to 12th and 13th. So their teamwork is starting to come together a little bit. The one who just pitted. Alright, okay. AP. Zernal, it's his name in Mongolian. Alright, okay. Okay, I see. As now Lorenz Patton has rejoined the session, and now here we go. On board with the BRC of Tom Roberts. Pulls to the outside line, towards turn 1. He's going to get it done nice and cleanly. I don't believe Titubi had any DRS, and that exposed him to attack. And now the McLaren will get a double dose of DRS, of course, because it is a double detection point. And he will use that to pull away even further from Tom Roberts. The only perk for the RB of Titubi is that it's his teammate, RSC teammate of Enzo Sabaton, right behind him, so he's not under pressure from in that perspective. As now Dennis Langrock getting down the inside of or Alejandro Loureiro, down the inside of Langrock, and gets himself past. So those medium tyres really falling away in comparison to the hards, because Loureiro in about 2 laps has closed that gap completely. And now you see Loureiro pulling away. Langrock is going to have to use absolutely everything over these next few laps. Down the inside goes Claudio Diaz, capitalising on that recharge from Dennis Langrock, and moves himself up into 2nd place. Can these two now work together to start pulling away from Langrock? Because of course he is probably going to be getting a huge undercut on them, so they need to work hard to execute it properly. And that actually has really helped Loureiro, because he's going to stay in P1 and not be under any threat from Langrock, who would be absolutely pushing to get back into P1. Is now down the inside goes Tom Roberts. Oh, sorry, goes Oliver Knott as well, up to 3rd place. Tom Roberts now sat right behind him in 5th place, and is probably going to be going for a move here as well. And Dennis Langrock all of a sudden dropping like a fly, as down the inside goes Tom Roberts, which switches to the outside and is the outside once again, but he's given just enough room by the Aston Martin of Longrock. Brakes later and gets the move done. Lovely stuff from Tom Roberts, up to 4th place, and is now right behind Oliver Knott. And Tom Roberts in this one is looking very, very fast, as there's a yellow flag in Sector 2. Can't see why though. What a piece of game. Some people have already messed it up. What a disgrace. I'm not too sure what you're referring to there, Pascal. GM. But please expand on that for me. Thanks to the great EA. Yeah, I think it's fair to say there are some issues with the EA F1 game that need to be addressed. Hopefully, with the F1 27 game next year, they have more time to work on it. So hopefully, it will be better. As now down the inside goes Claudio Diaz into turn 1. Alejandro Loureiro has to pull out of that one. Didn't want to have any of that. And now Claudio Diaz up into first place and has DRS to pull away as well. Oliver Knott now also going to be using the DRS to try and pull alongside and get up to second. He tries to go round the outside. Loureiro defends it well and stays in second place. But a good battle here at the top at the moment. Shevatarov was kicked out before the race even started. That's a shame. That's a real shame for him. This game continues to amaze me every time I start it. Yeah, there is something magical and mystical, if you will, that happens every time you boot up F1 25, and not always in a good way, sadly. There are some, as I said, there are some big issues which need to be addressed. Hopefully the DLC will patch some of these things, but we can all don't hold your breath, I suppose. Is what I would say to that. And now you see, by the way, Langrock already 9/10 back. So those mediums have absolutely dropped from being a second a lap faster to now a second lap slower than some cars. So that medium strategy has really not worked for TES driver and Dennis Langrock, because he is starting to really fall away in this field as Zach Miles into the pits, going on to medium tyres here, which haven't necessarily looked very good, if we're all being completely honest, but he believes in them, and that is the tyre he has chosen. And now Claudio Diaz, by the way, 7/10 up the road from Alejandro Loureiro. He's starting to pull the gap ever so slightly. Can he get himself out of DRS? We will see, and I imagine if he does, it might trigger the Red Bull with Loureiro to go for an undercut, because I think next lap will be when we enter the pit window. Oh no, that's for mediums. My apologies. Mediums are heading in on lap 13, probably 13 to 15, and then hards, what, probably lap 20, 21, somewhere around that margin, maybe even later, potentially. As now you see Dennis Langrock into the pits. He's probably going to be going to the end of the race on those hard tyres that he will probably pit onto. As Josh Rothwell has retired from the session in the pit lane. He was, of course, disconnected earlier in the race. So that is going to be his race. Done and dusted. There's now Enzo Sabaton locked into battle with Simon Pfeiffer and Lorenz Patton. By the way, the Mercedes of Pfeiffer is actually having a very good race here. A very, what's the word? A bit of a gold mine of a race. He's up 8 positions since the start of the race. His teammate Noel also plugging away well, up to 12th place. But Pfeiffer especially is really fighting back after a poor qualifying, and is making his way through the field quite comfortably, and is up to 10th place. Of course, a couple of people ahead of him have pitted, but now in DRS, can he start to try and pull the overcut as Enzo Sabaton picks up a 3-second penalty? Evening. Loureiro guy used to be FVR. Did he? I'll be real, I'm not completely sure. As now Enzo Sabaton into the pits. Tachubi into the pits as well. These two are going to get stacked. They're going to get stacked. Double stacked. So that's going to lose a huge amount of time for the second of Enzo Sabaton. Not what you want. Grip looking good. RSC, yeah. No, not Sabaton got punctured. No, I think he did, yeah. I think they're double stacking because Sabaton got a puncture, is what we're hearing. Not an optimal strat. Definitely not an optimal strat at all. But you know, it's definitely lost Sabaton time, as you see now. He is out in 18th place, 1.6 off the back of Noah Raza. Not at all what you want to be doing. Double stacking. As now we head on to lap 15 of 36 in the top two, starting to pull away from the couple of drivers behind, as now Tom Roberts was looking very close to the back of Oliver Knott. He's not going to go for an overtake here, though. He's going to stay behind, cool his engine a little bit, and just wait for the perfect opportunity. He will probably do it. Try and do it. If the VNT driver of Oliver Knott does lose DRS, that will be Tom Roberts' time to strike. But right now, Knott is just about doing enough to stay in that DRS range, as Zach Miles picks up the fastest lap on those new medium tyres. Starting to push and use those tyres to the best of his ability, as well. Tsubi is about 5 seconds behind Dennis Langrock in this one, or about 4.6, I'm going to say. So, yeah, the RBs have definitely lost time, especially Enzo Sabaton. But Tsubi, that undercut that Dennis Langrock has pulled on him is clearly quite powerful. So maybe what Langrock is going for could actually work quite well. We will see, as now lap 16 of 36 is Tom Roberts going to go for it here. He's not pulling out to cool his engine this time, so it could well be attack mode for Roberts, but he's not going to get close enough down the straight, and is going to brake a little bit early to try and avoid anything, as now Thomas Settoelia was under pressure by Paul Villegas, and then Daniel Hope moving himself up to 8th place past Lorenz Patton, and we'll get a second dose of DRS down the straight to use to defend and maintain 7th place in this race. FVR, fair enough. Just reading some of the, just catching up on some of the chat. As now there you see there, Dennis Langrock moving himself past Simone Equestre. Absolutely no issues there. Langrock on newer tyres. Equestre wasn't even gonna fight that one. As now it becomes a question of how big is Dennis Langrock's undercut going to be? And when do these guys ahead that haven't pitted yet, so everyone from 1st down to 10th, when are they gonna come in, is the question. I mean, is there anything wrong with FVR being a breeding ground for AMR? I mean, that's not me saying, that's something someone in chat said. As now Tsubi moving himself past Nico Rassenberg into turn 1, up to 14th place. Good move there, using those new tyres to full effect. Those 11 lap old hards for Rassenberg aren't going to be doing him any favours at the moment, I think it's fair to say. And next up on the agenda is Simone Equestre, who at the moment looks very, very shaky, and Tsubi is just rolling up on him at the moment. As there we go, Tsubi gets himself past Simon Equestre nice and comfortably. Absolutely no issues there for him, but we are well, we're in the game of strategy now. I think it's fair to say, you know, there's a few different strategies playing out here. Nico Rassenberg and Zach Miles definitely on a 2-stop strategy here, Dennis Langrock on a reversed one-stop in comparison to the rest of the field. Let's see what's going to happen. I mean, currently Langrock's undercut is looking relatively big. So we will see what happens when when all the field finally come into the pits. What will Langrock's gap look like? I mean, they're probably staying out until at least lap 21, if I had to guess. Could be a couple of laps more, though. As I said, I'm not a strategist nor a race engineer, so I could be completely wrong when I say these things. As Josh Rothwell finally leaving the session, he retired quite a few laps ago. Simon Pfeiffer picking up a 3-second penalty, sat in 9th place. Got his teammate of Noel behind him, who is 6.5 seconds back at the moment. But Pfeiffer starting to lose touch with Daniel Hope. 1.5 stands the gap. And with the VNT of Hope having DRS, he just lost even more through that section there. As they go, Langrock up to 11th place. He now has 3.8 seconds of clean air to contend with. So his undercut is very, very big. At the moment, he is probably going to come out comfortably in the race lead. It's just going to be a question of, can those around him, or those ahead of him at the moment, I should say, going to be able to close the gap enough on the medium tyres? I mean, if you ask me, it's probably going to be a yes. With DRS and fresher tyres, they will probably fly up to the back of him, but you never know. Sometimes these reverse strategies can pay dividends, so we will see. And I mean, the mediums aren't going to be the greatest thing in the world come the end. Enzo Sabaton picks up a 3-second penalty. Everyone staying out at the moment. Nobody choosing to go into the pit lane. But it's going to be interesting to see whether Langrock's strategy does indeed work. And I mean, he's flying up to the back of Noel at the moment. And then once he's past Noel, he has 7 seconds of clean air to Simon Pfeiffer. So there's a lot of clear track ahead of the Aston Martin at the moment. As now back to the top we go. Claudio Diaz still leads the way at the moment. Noel picking up another 3-second track limit penalty. So I just had to quickly check something. And he's actually pulling out a little bit of a gap on Alejandro Loureiro. He's not going to be under any pressure down this straight 100%, and we've not seen drivers particularly pushing to try and overtake at every opportunity. You know, they've been pretty tactical with their overtakes when they execute them, but Loureiro is going to gain a lot down this straight, but he isn't going to gain enough to try and have a sniff at an overtake. As now Langrock moves himself past Noel. Tsubi gets past APK, and I mean, Tsubi at the moment is only about 2 seconds off of the back of Dennis Langrock at the moment. So he's not like a million miles away. And now we're entering what I think at least is the pit window for the medium, or for hards to mediums. Personally, I think they're probably going to go out lap 22, 23. I think 21 might be a little too early, but of course I'm not an esports driver, so I definitely don't have as good time management skills as these guys. So my guesstimates could be completely wrong for their tyre wear and things of that nature. As now most people choosing to stay out. 22-23 is perfect to ruin your race. Right, fair enough. What would you say is the optimal lap then? Because as I said, I'm pretty clueless on when people will come in. As you see, Simon Pfeiffer coming in there, Daniel Hope coming in as well. 24-26 for most. Right, fair enough then. 34. 34 might be a little bit too late, I think, potentially. 24-26. I mean, yeah, probably. 21 is probably too early, if we're all being honest. I mean, 15 laps on mediums is difficult. It's definitely difficult. I mean, they have less fuel on board, but of course, you know, gonna be a long medium stint for Daniel. Yeah, it definitely is gonna be. He's gonna have to manage those tires for the first few laps. You know, bring them in nicely, because otherwise they will struggle towards the end. Now lap 23 of 36. Pau Villegas and Oliver Knott into the pits for medium tyres. So I was right on a few drivers coming into the pits on lap 22, but that's not, as I've been told, it's not optimal. As now that is Lorenz Patton getting himself past Tomasetto. Elia up to 4th place he goes as Simone Equestri picks up a 10-second penalty for speeding into the pit lane. Goes in for new tyres on the medium tyres as well. Nico Rassenberg onto hard, so he has gone double hard, I believe. So, some interesting strategies at play here today, I think it's fair to say. As now, end of lap 23. These guys at the front probably not in for another 2 laps or so. And now around we go. And Claudio Diaz into the pit lane. Everyone else is staying out at the moment. So I was right on a few drivers coming in. But of course, as I was told, it's not necessarily optimal to come in that early. As now Daniel Hope sets the fastest lap of the race on those new medium tyres, and Dennis Langrock. I mean, Langrock actually has a really nice undercut here. He's pulled a very nice undercut. He is, what, 9 seconds clear of the current highest medium runner of those that have stopped. So he's got a nice undercut, but the question is it going to be enough to stay in, as now Enzo Sabaton defending from an entire gaggle of those on the medium tyres around the outside, tries to go Oliver Knott. Got his VNT teammate of Daniel Hope behind him, but Sabaton once again defends it once again. He is probably defending to try and help his teammate Tachubi, who is up the road, and he's also in turn helping Dennis Langrock here. The gap nearly up to 10 seconds between these guys, as now Daniel Hope for a second looked like he was going to have a little think about a move on his teammate as Pau Villegas has a little think, but now there's an even better opportunity for Oliver Knott. Enzo Sabaton all out of whack through the final corner, and now here goes Oliver Knott. He's just going to blast himself past Enzo Sabaton, who has done a service to his teammate there and gained his teammate about 2 seconds in a single lap. So some good defending for his teammate there, as now down the inside goes Daniel Hope as well on Enzo Sabaton. Pau Villegas also getting past and Sabaton in a matter of a corner, and a straight goes from 6th place down to 9th. Mixed opinions on Enzo Sabaton's defending in the chat there, as now here comes Claudio Diaz around the outside. Sabaton leaving him absolutely no room, but Claudio Diaz doesn't care about that. He stays around the outside and gets the better traction. There's a little bit of contact between the two, but Claudio Diaz is going to pull out in front, come 9th place for the Alpine, and the TRT driver of Claudio Diaz is now sets his sights on Pau Villegas, Daniel Hope, and Oliver Knott. As now at the front, Alejandro Loureiro into the pits, Tomasetto, Elia, and Tom Roberts staying out. And now, I mean, look at the gap between Elia and Langrock. So Langrock has pulled one hell of an undercut here, to be fair. And there is a very high possibility Langrock could win this race, potentially. We will see. But now we will move to this battle here with Daniel Hope as Simon Pfeiffer now getting himself past Enzo Sabaton, but not before having a huge journey off the track. And now down the inside of Enzo Sabaton, who is defending these positions like they are his life, as Zach Miles now retires it in the pit lane. That's 3 retirements for today's race, and both Williams deciding to pack it up and saying enough is enough, as we now watch Claudio Diaz, who is sat right behind Pau Villegas, who is starting to fall away ever so slightly from the 2 Ferraris here. As now through the final corner they go. Is Claudio Diaz going to go for the overtake here as the final couple of drivers who haven't pitted come in to the pit lane? And now Claudio Diaz using his last little scraps of ERS to try and overtake. The Red Bull goes defensive. He manages to brake late enough to get alongside, force the overlap. He's going to have DRS. Pau Villegas doesn't get a very good exit, and now there's a little bit of contact between the two, and now Claudio Diaz does in fact move himself up to P5. As Tatel says, AMR are going to win this, praying for an AMR stinker. So, who are you predicting Pau Villegas to win, or Alejandro Loureiro? Who are you predicting to win this race? Come on, Daniel Hopey. As now we move, we're going to take a quick look at our race leader, Dennis Langrock, who is currently comfortably in the race lead. He just needs to try and minimize the damage to the gap at the moment. He's got 9 laps of racing left to go. The question is, can he manage an 8-second gap in those 9 laps? He needs to try and minimize what he can. It's going to be difficult considering they have 10 lap newer mediums than him. It's going to be a very, very tall order, but we will see. This is the time now for Langrock, if he's got any life left in his tyres, to use it, as Simona Equestri now retires it in the pit lane. Now this is Daniel's win, or Dennis win. I thought it said Daniel. This is Dennis win. I mean, it depends. It depends on how much the guys on mediums gain on Langrock and Tubi. Because with a few really good laps, so they could well be back in the fight, but at the moment it doesn't look like they're actually gaining all that much. They've gained maybe a couple of attempts that lap, if that. So, I mean, Langrock and Tatubi have actually kind of cooked on the strategy. To be fair to them, they've done really well. I thought in the first stint when Langrock really started to fall away, that maybe he'd made a mistake, but he certainly hasn't made a mistake, because he is comfortable out in front at the moment, as now you see Claudio Diaz moving himself up to P5 past Daniel Hope. And then Pau Villegas side by side with Lorenz Patton. A little bit of contact, a little bit of sliding And now Patton just ahead by about half a car length. They lean on each other on a straight. It looked like they magnet locked ever so slightly down the inside. Goes Lorenz Patton, left just enough room by the Red Bull of Pau Villegas, who is once again going to be forcing him off track ever so slightly. Still clean racing though. Gets the switchback, does the Alpine, and that will now be the outside line. And he will just about get the move done. And Alejandro Loureiro gets past his teammate as well. So he didn't put up much of a fight, did Pau Villegas. And Loureiro gets past his AMR teammate up to 6th place. And all of that has dropped DRS from Lorenz Patton has lost DRS to Daniel Hope here. So they will need to try and get back in once again. I mean, Tatubi is starting to drop a little bit of time, actually, to Oliver Knott. But Dennis Langrock actually isn't really dropping much to the guys behind him. As now here goes Alejandro Loureiro, forced very, very tight on the track by the TRT driver. As now there's a little bit of contact, they lean on each other. Lorenz Patton not willing to give this one up round the inside, but switches to the outside, and unfortunately doesn't have much juice left in his tank, and has to settle for 7th place here now, unfortunately for him. But Lorenz Patton not willing to give up any position. Florian fans is a fan saying, "Go on, Lorenz. You need to join the Dennis Langrock fan club," says Jack Harrington. $10 for whoever takes out Mofa. As now lap 31 of 36 begins Dennis Langrock, and he is still very comfortable in the race lead. He has done very well on the strategy and leads very comfortably. As now Claudio Diaz once again trying to push to overtake Oliver Knott in P2. Race wasn't even that fun for Dennis and Eric. I mean, no, but sometimes you don't mind that much. I mean, Langrock is probably going to be getting one hell of a win, as now that is Claudio Diaz moving himself past Oliver Knott comfortably up to 4th. After 3rd place he goes, and down to 4th goes the Ferrari. Now Lorenz Patton once again behind Daniel Hope here, who picks up a 3-second time penalty. And then Simon Pfeiffer follows through in turn and also picks up a track limit penalty as well. As now Lorenz is primed and ready to try and go for an overtake down the DRS straight. Daniel Hope does not have DRS. He's 1.6 behind Loureiro, who is probably also going to go for a move on Oliver Knott down this straight as well. As now here we go. Past goes Lorenz Patton. What about Alejandro Loureiro? Not quite enough. Might maybe go for a switchback. Tomasetto Elliott also going for it as well, trying to go around the outside of Lorenz Patton. And I think he's just about going to do it. He's going to have DRS as well. And now Tom Roberts trying to get involved in this one as well. It could be a free wide into turn 4. Tom Roberts stays behind. There's a little bit of contact between the Alpine and Aston Martin. Big slide for Tomasetto Elliott. That opens the opportunity for Tom Roberts to go down the inside. Can he get both of them in one corner? He can't get the Aston Martin, but he does get Lorenz Patton just about. And that all kicked off. Big style there between those three. And it ends with Tomasetto Elliott up to 6th, Tom Roberts up to 7th, and Lorenz Patton losing 2 positions down to 8th. He attacked Daniel Hope, and unfortunately didn't get what he wanted from that. As now Alejandro Loureiro gets himself past Claudio Diaz as well. Up to 3rd place he goes pretty comfortably. He's probably a little bit too far back from Tatubi to try and go up to 2nd place. So he's probably 3rd place is probably going to be his best here in this race, playing DRS instead of pushing to catch guys ahead. As now Tom Roberts gets past Tomasetto Elia, up to 6th place he goes. As now we head to lap 34 and Langrock has this race wrapped up. But one about those behind Tom Roberts is sat right behind Oliver Knott here. And now Noel and Nico Rassenberg fighting as well. But that is not for position, so we will stay on board with this. With Tom Roberts going to go for a move here. He's not going to be close enough. Unfortunately, he's probably saving it for a couple laps time. The whole argument going on in Twitch chat at the moment. As now Oliver Knott braking early, Tom Roberts getting very close to the back of that VNT Ferrari. And now Claudio Diaz, by the way, dropping out of DRS on Alejandro Loureiro. So he is not able to keep up. Those 2-lap newer tyres potentially playing a little bit of a role for the AMR of Loureiro here. As for the penultimate time, we will head towards the DRS straight. And now DRS deploys. Tom Roberts is going to move himself up to 6th place and past Oliver Knott comfortably. Tomasetto Elia also going to go for it on the inside line. Oliver Knott will try to switch it back. Isn't quite able to make it happen. So moves down to 7th place. These two of Tom Roberts and Tomasetto Elia capitalising there nicely on each other's moves. By the way, Enzo Sabaton, his progress sees him down in 11th place. He's lost position to Pau Villegas and Daniel Hope, who go side by side through turn 4, turn 5, and now Enzo Sabaton could potentially get involved in this. He chooses to back out of it, but he is going to gain a little bit of something from this big scrap. Those two lean on each other, and now round the outside is going to go Enzo Sabaton, which is going to switch to the inside. He's going to go off track, and then Pau Villegas and Daniel Hope going to make big contact with each other. They're going to lose a big amount of time. So Enzo Sabaton goes up to 9th place, and then Daniel Hope drops down to a 12th place because APK comes charging through, and now Pau Villegas is going to be under pressure from the FCT as well. So it all kicked off there, but now we head to the final lap of the race. Dennis Langrock comfortably in the lead still. But what about these positions behind APK now? As you see, getting himself past. But now we go back to Tom Roberts, who's under a little bit of pressure. Tomasetto Elia also getting overtaken by Claudio Diaz. Here he goes down the inside, gets the move done. And now can he get past Tom Roberts as well towards turn 4? As now DRS deploying, he's not got much ERS left in his tank. Tomasetto Elia has more, gets down, forces it down the outside, which is going to switch to the inside line. There's a little bit of contact between the two. The Aston Martin is going to get the better exit. Oliver Knott going to try and capitalise on this as well. Goes down the inside. He's going to get the overlap, and he's going to get the better exit. And I think he is going to pull ahead of the TRT driver of Claudio Diaz. He does. So Claudio Diaz moves down to 7th place, and for the second time this race, he absolutely loses a bundle of positions. But now we will switch to Dennis Langrock, who has masterminded a brilliant strategy, made it work, as round the final corner he goes. Dennis Langrock wins for TES here in Mexico. It's going to be Tachubi for second place for RSC. AMR take third place with Alejandro Loureiro, who gave it his all but couldn't quite get Tachubi at the end. Tom Roberts fourth, Thomas Setuelia fifth, Oliver Knott sixth, Claudio Diaz seventh, Lorenz Patton eighth. APK will come home 9th after penalties. Nico Rassenberg gaining a position. Enzo Sabaton down to 11th once penalties are applied. Paul Villegas 12th. Daniel Hope 13th. Noel 14th. Simon Pfeiffer will be 15th. And then it will be Noah Raza in 16th. Everyone happy? APK got points. APK picking up 2 points for FCT in this one. But what a race it was. Pfeiffer comes home 15th. Now Razzle will be 16th, but what a race it was for Dennis Langrock. What a race it was. He masterminded the one-stop strategy. He was under no pressure. Tachubi very nearly, if there was another lap, Tachubi would have dropped to second place, but he just about brought it home with a time to spare. And there we are. Here is the podium. As we will just watch the final podium celebrations, the champagne being sprayed. That was a fascinating race, especially at the end. It all kicked off in the final couple of laps there. We will finish the podium celebrations. As we're not going to, unfortunately, get to read the order one more time, so we are going to black screen, but we will switch back to this. You just get to see me once again. What a race that was, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely everything happened that could have happened towards the end there, and I've got to say I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I hope you guys did as well. So join us for more next week at the same time, next Friday. Thank you all very much for watching. I have been Owen Baldero, and we will see you next week for round 6. Goodbye.